Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Hope you all had a great weekend as we're back here on a Monday with lots to chat about. Almost too much. Might have to save some stuff for later in the week because a lot happened over the last couple days. A lot to digest, a lot to get into. On today's program, I'm going to be talking about UFC Nashville, the outcomes of certain fights, just the overall night. Really fun crowd in Nashville. Really enjoyed it. We got a huge signing in the NBA with Anthony Davis breaking a record made by Jaylen Brown just about a week ago. So that the largest contract, the most money per season in NBA history, that lasted a week. Now Anthony Davis will hold that crown. A bunch of NFL things. Alvin Kamara suspended by the NFL. Cam Jordan, his teammate, gets an extension. That's happening. Preseason opens proper Thursday night. Houston and the Patriots, Minnesota, Seattle, and every team will play in the preseason this upcoming week. I do want to get into college football later in the week when it comes to conference realignment, things of that nature. We'll see if I have enough time today. We could save that for a topic because it needs to be gone into depth. It's complicated. There's a lot of moving parts. But that will be discussed this week. But I have to start today with, Kyle Dubas was talked about a lot in Toronto because he was the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And he was put on this pedestal as the Howie Roseman, in baseball, I always mention Theo Epstein as the next great young GM that's going to take over the sport. And in Toronto, he made some good moves. He signed some bad contracts. Look at the Matthews length. Look at the Nylander length on their last contracts, what he did. But he was beloved in Toronto. But he was never a genius. He was never brilliant to me. He just did the job. Sure, you could say was he better than the average GM? I don't know. He never won one playoff series in his tenure as GM of the Maple Leafs, but he was put on a pedestal, as most people in Toronto are, whether they deserve it or they don't. Most the latter. But what I marvel at is not what he did in Toronto, because who cares? That's over. You move on. What I marvel at about Kyle Dubas over the last, this is like 3 months, this is less than that, 2 months, is how this guy went from overplaying his hand into getting a contract extension in Toronto. We believed, or the media did, although those people reporting on that story are from Toronto, so take that for what it's worth, which again, not much. No offense, journalists out there. He went from overplaying his hand to losing the dream job, the best job in the NHL, to landing a better gig, being in charge of an entire operation, and adding on to that what he accomplished this weekend. Let's just remember, he had a deal done with the Toronto Maple Leafs if he wanted to come back. Signed, sealed, delivered, I'm yours. He could have been back in the office with Shanny and his buddy Sheldon Keefe and all the other 1,800 employees that they have there, the 6 assistant general managers, which is an NHL record, by the way, and he could have been in there cutting it up with all of them. But in the 11th hour, on a Thursday night in late June, this is late May, late May, because why did I say June? Of course, the Maple Leafs wouldn't be playing in June. Late May, he sends an email to Brendan Shanahan and says, I want more money. I feel I deserve it. I deserve a bump in pay to be the GM of this team after what I've accomplished. And this was, like I said, 11th hour, late night email, sending basically a hey, you up, or new phone, who dis, to Brendan Shanahan. When they had a contract done, they were peas and carrots ready to get back to work. And then Shanny said, whoa. We were done. We had a deal. We had a date booked, and you want to change the location? You want to change the day? Do you really want to date me? People might not, this might be the wrong analogy, but this might be like The Bachelor or Bachelorette with the rose ceremony. If you've never watched the show, have no respect for it, hate it, but we'll use it for right now. Here, take the rose. I love you. We're going to get married. And then the second they get off the set, they friggin' go. One goes to New Jersey, the other goes to Idaho, and they're smoking pot with their respective families, collecting a check, not getting married. But Kyle Dubas sent the email. And Brandon Shanahan said, Judas, he's betraying me. A2 Brute, what is this? And he fired his ass. And the instant reaction, he overplayed his hand. What's Dubas doing? Where's he gonna go? He'll only work for the Maple Leafs. Yeah, right. Yada yada yada. Less than a week later, Kyle Dubas went from unemployed, overplaying his hand, to being the president of hockey operations with the Pittsburgh Penguins. With more pay, a better title, and a 6-year contract that he was not offered in Toronto. Wasn't getting 6 years in Toronto. With a lesser title and less money. Just going to throw that out there again. So he fumbled the bag and then he stumbled into the bag. It's a calamity of something. It's not a calamity of errors because it worked out for him, but it was a calamity of chaos. Let's go with that word. Calamity of chaos. And you might say the Pittsburgh Penguins aren't as good a team as the Toronto Maple Leafs. No disagreement here. The Pittsburgh Penguins isn't as sexy of a job as the Toronto Maple Leafs. Well, I wouldn't agree with that. They're one of 32 teams. You work for Arizona, you work for Toronto. You're a GM. It's the same job, it's the same position. People can put lipstick on a pig, they can make something look better than what it is. You are working for one of 32. You work for the Yankees, you work for the Marlins. There's no difference. There isn't. The only difference is it's easier to sell tickets in the big market. You actually have to work. You don't have to work as hard, actually, in the big market to put on a good product, because some people will just show up to watch it, good or not. Good on Leafs fans. But, okay, he doesn't have as good a team in Pittsburgh. They're old. I've talked about them. I think they were the outpost for the old folks home. You got plus 35 Crosby, plus 35 Malkin. Chris Letang's had 2 fucking heart attacks. They re-signed Tristan Jarry. I don't like this team whatsoever. They missed the playoffs last year. But if we're just looking at the grand scheme of things, for his life, for his family, he's a winner because he did better for himself. And that's all we're trying to do in life. Sure, we can hope other people succeed. We can hope that our friends and our family are all successful. And yes, of course, I want everybody in my life that I love to be successful. But at the end of the day, I want to be successful more than the other people. And anybody who disagrees with that is a liar. I just point that out because that's my personality and that's who I am. The only person who might want me to be more successful than themselves is my mother. But she's selfless and she's kind of one of a kind. She's a good person. I wouldn't know anything about that. But, I love her for it. It's nice to have somebody in my corner. But it's rare, I think. My father loves me, but I think my father wants to be more successful than he wants me to be successful. Because he should. That's life. But looking at this grand scheme of things, Dubas did better for himself. Okay, he's not in a good situation. But what I do give him credit for is he's a GM that's not afraid to take swings. He's a GM that will stick by his laurels. And he might look at hockey differently than I. He might look at the sport differently than an old school fan or the local man at the pub, but he does it his way, and he sticks to that. He gets to Pittsburgh. He re-signs Tristan Jarry. Didn't like that. He brings on a bunch of different additions, some good, some bad, but he's trying to make an older team competitive. He's trying to make a team that missed the playoffs. He's trying to get them back into the postseason at the tail end of Crosby, Malkin, and Letang's respective careers. Well, we've known for months that the Pittsburgh Penguins have been in on Erik Karlsson. Erik Karlsson, the reigning Norris Trophy winner, the 3-time Norris Trophy winner, and a man who's never really been, sounds harsh because he didn't make a conference final in Ottawa, but a winning player. And what I mean by a winning player is, sure, you can have your stats, sure, you can win the Norris. People will look at you as this mythical figure. Great hair, good-looking guy. Can't take that away from him. Great facial hair, good mustache. Trying to match him in that degree. But his teams always fail. He's always the story. And it's never about the team. It's about Erik Karlsson. It's about his statistics. And yet he wins a Norris Trophy as the league's best defenseman this year. And his team picks 4th in the draft. Do those things correlate? But just ponder that for a second. So then we get to this weekend. Pittsburgh is in on Erik Karlsson. Toronto's in. Not really. Carolina's kicking tires. Never made sense to me, as I talked about many times. There's only about 3 or 4 teams that this makes sense for the team to even consider it, to even kick tires, to even think about it, because he makes $11.5 million and because he's an aging player who's had injury problems, who's been inconsistent, and was this last year the best he's got to offer, and the rest is going to fall off the fucking rails. We're going to see. But Kyle Dubas, riverboat gambler, bet on himself, stumble into a better job, having a great old summer in Pittsburgh, loving the city, glad to be out of Toronto with T-Swizzle coming through real soon. He made a move. Pittsburgh acquired Erik Karlsson over the weekend, retaining $10 million of his $11.5 million salary per year over the next 3, alongside a San Jose 2026 third-round pick, prospect Dylan Hamelic and Rem Pitlick. This was the 3-team trade. San Jose acquired Mike Hoffman, Mikhail Granlund from Pittsburgh, Jan Ruda, and a Pittsburgh 2024 first-round pick, which is top 10 protected. And Montreal, we'll get to them. But I want to start with Pittsburgh and them doing this. They're trying to win. Sidney Crosby has always been a winning player. He's always been a guy that you're not going to tank, you're not reloading. He's never done that in his career. He's Michael Jordan in the sense that he doesn't accept losing. He doesn't accept just mediocrity. You're always trying to win. You're not putting a minutes restriction on me. I'm not sitting out at the end of the season. We're pushing to make the playoffs, and if we get in, maybe we can go. But any idiot, and Sidney Crosby's no idiot when it comes to roster construction and knowing what it takes to win, he knew his team was old. He knew his team wasn't good enough, and that they were nowhere close to winning a Stanley Cup. But Pittsburgh acquiring Erik Karlsson is a sign, it's a shot across the bow that we still think that we have enough to compete. We still believe that we have enough to win our division, which, as I pointed out many times, the Metropolitan Division has never been weaker. Carolina is a very good team. Washington is not. They're on the downslope, and we'll get to the Wilson contract, but I want to talk about Washington by itself later. They're not good. Philadelphia is in a complete teardown rebuild. They want to lose games. And they're gonna, because they don't have to want to lose games. They're going to, because they're of merit, because of how bad that team is. The Islanders are the Islanders. They'll always be there. They'll be competitive. They'll struggle to score goals in the regular season because that's just their formula. But do they scare you? No. You go through that division. The Rangers are in upheaval. I haven't liked their summer all that much. They haven't gotten that much bigger. They haven't made a big trade. They still have a certain player on their roster who's might even be worse than Erik Karlsson when it comes to a winning player, and his last name rhymes with Renarin. So this division is completely winnable. It's up for grabs. It's anybody's game. And I think Kyle Dubas looks at the situation and says, we can win this division. We can compete with Carolina, and we can try to compete for a Stanley Cup. Because we're seeing a shift. The Western Conference is better than the East right now. That's one person's opinion. But I look around, Vegas, Edmonton, Colorado. I think Calgary's going to be a lot better this year, and I think they're going to compete and be one of the top teams in the West. Minnesota is consistently good and consistently competitive. Sure, you have your Anaheims, you have your Clunkers, San Jose. These teams stink, Arizona. But you look, the Central, St. Louis is a good team. They will be better. The West is stronger than the East. Tampa isn't as good as they used to be. Boston certainly aren't as good as they used to be. I just went through the whole Metro. Florida might not have a team to field until goddamn November after what they just went through to get here. So the league is in a weird position where you don't have any super teams. Sure, Vegas won last year, and you still like Colorado, who won the year before, but they might be on the top of the betting lines to win the Stanley Cup alongside Toronto, because you have to throw them in there if you're a gambling company. But are you worried about them winning? Not really. Because who knows? It's a weird sport. There's injuries. There's this, that, and the other. Gabriel Landeskog's out for the season with Colorado. Okay, that's a pretty big loss. So there's uncertainty. And Pittsburgh looked at Karlsson and said he fits our mold. He's older, but he's still playing well. He has a hunger to win because unlike Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Karlsson's never won a Stanley Cup. I think he wants to shift the narrative that he's not a winning player, which will be the narrative unless he wins. And he has to be a piece of a team and not the whole damn pie. Can you be a piece of pie? Can you be a piece of the team? Can you gel and help your defense partner so it's not Mark Mathot doing everything defensively? Could you find a common ground there? So there's that interest. He fits. Pittsburgh went through a trend. Dumoulin is gone. Jan Ruda is gone. So their defense is changing. Now Jeff Petrie is gone off the roster. So I think they still need to do some work on their defense core to make it viable, to make it really just a formidable group. But Erik Karlsson's a good starting point. He's a good... You look at him and you go, okay, we know we have one guy already. But I'm looking at daily face-off. Their defense core, they have Ryan Graves. I like Ryan Graves. Didn't like his contract, but I like him. Graves, Letang, Pettersson, Karlsson, Pierre-Olivier Joseph, and Chad Ruhwedel. I like 4 of that. I like 4 of the 6. I honestly think Graves playing with Erik Karlsson would be a better fit than Letang. Letang and Karlsson are similar. Oddly enough, Letang now looks like the defensive stalwart on that back end, which credit to him, because he's not great either. But he, it's not a terrible defense score, but that 5'6" is weak. Unlikely to improve because it's late in the offseason. Trade deadline might be the situation. But for Kyle to be unemployed to join, to then turn into a better position, better role, and to land in Erik Karlsson, kudos to you. That's all I can say is good work. Not to mention, in this trade, I don't know what the, pardon my language here, I don't know what the fuck San Jose and Montreal were doing Sunday afternoon, but they must have been at Osheaga smoking, doing something a little more than smoking the weed, because I don't get this at all. San Jose gets in the deal Mike Hoffman, 1 year left, Mikael Granlund, 2 more years at $5 million. He is one of the worst players in the NHL, Mikael Granlund. He can't play anymore. He can't skate up and down the ice, and that was a trade at the deadline from the previous regime in Pittsburgh with Ron Hextall and Brian Burke. That deserves a goddamn Emmy in and of itself, that they got this contract off the books. That was an albatross. That was a sinker. It was killing this team. It's in San Jose now. They get Jan Ruda. Okay, great. Jan Ruda. Traded at the trade deadline. And a Pittsburgh 2024 first. For San Jose. That's the return? 1 pick? And 3 players that you don't want. Mike Hoffman's going to score some goals for you. He did that real well in Montreal when he was on the ice, which was hardly ever. Mikael Granlund. For Pittsburgh to get Mikael Granlund and Jeff Petry's contract off their books in this deal, okay, they only got teams to retain $1.5 million. I'm not the biggest Erik Karlsson fan. I'll take Erik Karlsson at 10, then Mikael Granlund at 5, and Jeff Petry, he makes 6. So you're actually saving money. You're saving about $1.5 million with the Petry and Granlund contracts, and you get a better player who's coming off a Norris. The only thing Granlund and Petry are going to win are maybe contracts in Europe, because that's where they're going to be playing soon if they weren't under contract in the NHL. That's how sorry those 2 guys have been lately. So to get those 2 guys gone, to get Casey DeSmith off your books as well, woof. This is a home run. It's a home run because, okay, you take a chance on Karlsson. And the last thing we've seen, which was in April, he was winning a Norris. You hope he can continue that run. He might never win a Norris in Pittsburgh, but can him and Letang, can they find a partnership on that defense core, and maybe Pittsburgh gets one last kick at the can to win another championship for Sid. That's the hope. That's the optimal scenario, because otherwise, this is a really good move by Kyle Dubas. It's the worst for San Jose. I don't get it. I don't get it. They're not trading Granlund. He's on that I'll eat crow. But if he is not on their team throughout the next 2 years, I'll be stunned. They should buy him out. They really should, because that $5 million is giving you nothing. I get, and if the thought is, if you hear this anywhere, well, it probably won't because it's San Jose, so nobody want to do a deep dive into their analysis on this, but I'll do it for you because I care about all 32. The thought might be, well, San Jose wants to lose. They're in a rebuild, so taking on Mikael Granlund does not matter because they want to lose. He's a losing player. Okay. That argument would make a lot more sense if we didn't just go through a draft where the generational talent was at number 1, where Connor Bedard was taken number 1 overall. Next year's draft is nondescript. They don't know who's going number 1. It's not set in stone. There's discussion. I don't know who it's going to be. So if the thought is, well, let's win the draft lottery this year, why not do it fucking last year? Why not do this at the deadline? Lose more games. Be bad. If that's the thought process, if that's what's coming from San Jose, shame on you. Mike Grier, I want you to succeed. I want to like your decisions, but this trade is a 0 out of 10 for the San Jose Sharks. You got Erik Karlsson off your books, but you only get one draft pick, a 2024 first top 10 protected from Pittsburgh. Okay. So San Jose might get 2 picks in the top 10 of next year's draft. I'd rather have Bedard. Give me one really good player than 2, I don't know. Than 2, this guy might hit. This player has got a lot of upside. We could just fast forward to next year's draft coverage. We know it's going to be. It's so shit every year. I like this player a lot. He's got a great heart playing out in Hamilton. Really great heart. He's got a great family. His father was a dentist, and he fixes kids' teeth for free. And he went through a lot this year. Went through a lot. He got demoted to the second line power play midway through, and he injured his knee skydiving. But he battled through, and he's got a lot of upside at the NHL level. He doesn't have an arm, but he's got a lot of talent, and he very well with the right situation could succeed. That's every prospect. That's why I watch the draft on mute. That's why I watch most things on mute, other than content, of course. But you're gonna give me 2 prospects in the top 10 that I don't know, or give me Connor Bedard, generational talent. Everybody thinks he's going to succeed. I'll take generational talent. Sure, it's a lottery. He could have missed out. Give me Fantilli. Give me him. They could have drafted Michkov. Didn't do that. Stupid. But San Jose, just overall bad. You took on money. You got rid of $10 million per year. I get it. But you got Granlund, 5 years, times 2. Oh my God. San Jose. Montreal. They reacquired Jeff Petrie. Acquire Casey DeSmith, another goalie in Montreal. Get prospect Nathan Laguerre and a Pittsburgh 2025 second-round pick because they took on some money. It sure sounds from media people in La Belle Province that they're going to be trying to flip Jeff Petrie as soon as possible. Doesn't sound like he'll be on the roster to start the season. Although, when I hear that, I think, where's he going? Not a whole lot of teams have money, have flexibility, have the option to take on a guy like Jeff Petrie. It's easier said than done in this hard cap world. He's got a big contract, and you got to find a way to fit that in. So I don't disagree with the media people that say this might happen or it's a good idea, because it is a good idea. But also, who's taking on the money? There has to be a landing spot for a guy like Jeff Petrie, who is coming off a horrible season in Montreal, has been, since he went to Pittsburgh, it's a horrible season in Pittsburgh. Since he landed in Pittsburgh, it was a disaster contract. It never worked out. So, good luck moving him. They get Casey DeSmith. So now Montreal has Casey DeSmith, Montembaum, and Jake Allen. So they have 3 goaltenders. I imagine they trade DeSmith for, or if you think Montembaum's your goaltender of the future, you trade Jake Allen, because I think you get more for him. And I don't think it's a horrible idea to trade Jake Allen for Montreal, because they're not going to be a great team again. And to me, he is not worth the price of admission half the time. He's injured a lot, and he's not that valuable anymore. When you're not in the ice, I don't care how good of a player you are. I get it. He's a New Brunswick guy. Love that. Stanley Cup champ. Great. But when you're not on the ice, you bring no value. Just hard facts of life. Nathan Laguerre sounds like a fun prospect. Montreal out of this, I give them. They needed a third team to be involved to get a second round pick from Pittsburgh. Okay, I'll give them like a 4 out of 10. If they can flip Petrie, I'll move that up to a 6 because you get a decent prospect and a second round pick. So that's not a bad trade to be involved, to be a third team in a situation. See, Dubas is a great GM. Lee should have paid him. Yes and no. I think there's a lot of good GMs out there. But for the most part, I would say the Leafs have done a good job this summer. Treliving wasn't my favorite GM in Calgary. I would say his first couple months as GM of the Maple Leafs have been a success. I think he's made the team tougher. I think he's given the team a new identity that Dubas kind of refused to do when he was at the helm. And it remains to be seen how good a team, how this group will gel in Pittsburgh. But I just credit him for improving his situation in life and taking the risk and playing chess when others were playing checkers, basically. I think Kyle did a lot of good stuff in Toronto, certainly. But I also look at the Matthews contract, the length of it, the Nylander contract, the holdout, then giving in at the last second. That was a mistake. In my opinion, obviously the Matt Murray debacle of a trade, might have been his worst decision. Signing Patrick Marleau to a 3-year contract, that wasn't a smart decision. They had to trade a first-round pick to get rid of Patrick Marleau, which ended up being, forgetting his name now, Carolina Hurricanes player that I do like, and I'm mad at myself for forgetting his name. He's currently playing in the NHL, but you remember the big splashes. But I think he's a good GM. I don't think he's a great GM. But I think this trade for the Pittsburgh Penguins is a 10. I think it's a 10 out of 10 because you improve your team. Jarvis, thank you. Seth Jarvis, exactly. And I like Seth Jarvis. He would have helped the Maple Leafs the last couple of years on a rookie contract, and the kid competes. But I think for Pittsburgh, this is a 10 trade. You improve your team. You make it more competitive. You keep Sidney happy, because if the thought is Sidney is just going to stay in Pittsburgh through the remainder of his contract because he's so loyal and you can't see him in another jersey other than being a Penguin, that is just stupid logic. That's tribalism. I've talked about that before. To think, oh, I only play for this team because it's where I was drafted, that's just so stupid. It's so dumb. If Sidney didn't think he had a chance to win in Pittsburgh, he would have demanded he would have looked for ways to get out of Pittsburgh after this year. And I truly believe that. And maybe he still will. Because I don't think he wants to go 2017 till when he's done his career not winning a title. Whenever that is, I don't think he's close to being done playing, but he's closer to the end than he's close to the beginning. Because he's in his mid-30s. But if he looks at the Penguins and he says, we don't have a chance to win, what the hell am I doing here? I'm a competitor. But Dubas is a shrewd operator. He makes smart decisions for the most part. But again, we have to remember, he's a general manager that's won one playoff series in his career. One. That is not exactly Mr. Perfect Record. That's not dominance. That's not somebody that is all that great at the job. If it's just about results, that's mediocrity personified. We'll see how it goes for him in Pittsburgh. I think he's off to a good start. I like the Lars Eller signing. Tristan Jarry worries me. I think there were smarter options out there in net. But this was it was a swing, and it landed, and he gave up nothing, really. A first-round pick for a Pittsburgh team that's trying to win, okay, who cares? That pick is, you're trying to win. You're in win now. But picks matter to teams that are trying to get better. Draft picks are the elixir for the bad teams. It's the potion. It's the magic spell that will morph you into what you want to be, which is a contender. You get the draft picks to try to get to where your competitors are. Pittsburgh has been in the middle. They're not in the periphery, but they've been in the middle, which is honestly worse than the periphery, because being in the middle means you are nowhere. You're just in the quicksand. Pittsburgh says where we are, where our team is, they believe they can get closer to the top of the mountain. And they went that way. It was one of two ways. It was sell Crosby, Letang, not sign Malkin and Letang. They decided to do it. And now they're going all in, trying to win again with an older team. We'll see if it works, but I applaud them on the swing. Now, on the opposite side of the coin, the Washington Capitals are a team like Pittsburgh that's been competitive, you could argue, since the 05 lockout, the 04-05 lockout. Since Alex Ovechkin arrived in Washington, they've been a perennial playoff team. They've been an interesting team. They've been on NBC. They're in a lot of televised games, and they've had the greatest goal scorer in the sport's history on their team. Well, now Washington is old. They have kind of dried up. Nick Backstrom has had multiple hip surgeries. TJ Oshie's gone through stuff. Ovechkin is 36. And this team is kind of in a state of, we don't know where we are. We have Ovechkin. We want him to break the goals record in a Capitals uniform. So in saying all that, last week they re-signed one of my favorite players, Tom Wilson, to a 7-year, $45.5 million deal, which is $6.5 million per year. I love Tom Wilson. He could be on my team any day of the week. He is unique. He is the chameleon of the NHL. He is something you don't see every day. He scares people, and he has a presence on the ice that you can't quantify, but you know it's there. However, Tom Wilson hardly played last year. He's missed over 80 games the last 2 seasons. And he is getting older, not younger. And the way he plays the physical brand of hockey, run and gun down the ice, reckless abandon, fighting, it normally does not age all that well. And despite having lackluster numbers and the Capitals pondering trading Tom Wilson, they give him this massive extension. And my thought on it is Tom Wilson's 29. You might say, okay, he's still in his prime of his career. He'll be 30 in March. But I worry that the Washington Capitals are turning into a nostalgia act, and they're no longer relevant. They're a band that just plays the hits, but they're not writing any new music. They're just there. We're going to play the songs that we wrote in the 70s and the 80s, but we're still performing in 2023. The Capitals were really good. They won a Stanley Cup in 2018. They still have Alex Ovechkin at 36. They have Tom Wilson, who's 29, but you could argue that body's 35. Nick Backstrom, who isn't the same. Darcy Kemper, who's good, not great. John Carlson, who's still very good, but he took a puck to the face last year and he missed most of the season. And this team, just like Pittsburgh, missed the playoffs. And I would argue that Washington, being cash-strapped, have not done as good a job as Kyle Dubas has in Pittsburgh at making them viable and making them competitive once again. They want Ovechkin to break the goal record. Tom Wilson is a fan favorite in the nation's capital. Well, all that might be true, but are they going to put a competitive team on the ice? Is this team going to be a Stanley Cup contender? And the answer is no. The answer is no, and that's where I have a problem with the team. You're keeping all the players that were there when you won, but that was in 2018. It's 2023 now. And it's August. That means we're getting close to 2024. It's been a minute since they won a Stanley Cup. They have not won a playoff series. They have not won a playoff series since 2018. Their last playoff series win was in Las Vegas, Nevada, when they lifted the Stanley Cup. So they've been the same since then until this past year where they regressed, where they missed the playoffs. They had more injuries than any team. Sure, okay, you can make the argument. Washington's healthy, they make the playoffs. But did they win a playoff round? I'd argue no. Because I don't think they were that good. Were they better than Washington? Sure, Washington didn't win. So were they better than the Islanders? Sure, but the Islanders lost to Carolina in 6 games. I think Washington would have lost to Carolina in 6 games or fewer. I don't like just saying, okay, come out to watch this team because you know all the names. The Bulls had an old team. It worked because they kept winning. We got Dennis. We got Scotty. We got MJ. We got Horace Grant. Yeah, but we're going for the last dance. We're still winning titles. Every damn year we're doing this. That's not what's happening in Washington. It's just a team that's been together for a long time that can't cut it anymore. They were once successful, but they are not anymore. The Washington Capitals are kind of like the bad boy Pistons of 2004. They won one title, but they were never all that successful after. They broke up quick, and those players went, Ron Artest won a championship with the Lakers, but it wasn't happening with the Pistons again. I think Tom Wilson would have been really valuable around the NHL, and I think he would have fetched a big return. And I'm talking draft capital, and I'm talking just the future. But Ted Leonsis, who owns the Capitals and who owns the Wizards stink. They're in a complete rebuild. I don't think he wants 2 teams. They're going to have a hard time selling tickets in the same building at the same time. And it is a business at the end of the day. And I don't own the team. I look at this through the prism of team building from a general manager point of view. And I don't want Tom Wilson at 36 on my roster making $6.5 million. And I love the guy. I might be his biggest fan. I value him like no other. He's a boogeyman. He's incredible. But can he keep playing? Will he be playing at 36 or will he be on the LTIR? I don't know. It's not a contract I would have signed. I don't like the way the Washington Capitals are doing business. It's not as productive as the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then they're in the same division. And Ovechkin, I don't think he ever wants to leave Washington. And as of right now, Crosby's in the same position. And I think they want him to break the goals record in a Capitals uniform. There's a lot of money towards that. There's a lot of come to the game tonight because he might do it. How many games till he does it? You can market that. Even if your team is bad. Look at the Angels and Shohei Ohtani over since he got into the league. You can make it happen. You can sell somebody on something that's not all that sexy because it's unique. Ovechkin scoring goals like nobody else has been unique since he entered the league. But overall, the Washington Capitals and the way they're approaching business, the way they are approaching being competitive and winning, to me, is stupid. It's not going to work. It's not a winning formula. And I worry about them. Because I think they got some bad contracts. I think they're signing people the fans like. But basing your decisions on fans, basing your decisions on what you think the fans want is a one-way ticket to getting fired. Because fans don't remember what their opinion was when your team sucks. When the team sucks, and they love the team. They don't love you. And they forget their opinion because they just want the team to be good. They'll move on to the next opinion. They'll move on to the player you could have had if you made a deal to help you in the future. So this might sell tickets for now, but I don't think Washington's going to be good for a long time. And these deals are a big part of the reason why. Final hockey story of the day. This one is hilarious to me. So out of nowhere last week, there was no rumblings of this, no real talk. The Edmonton Oilers have a press conference in August. And the big news is they have hired Connor McDavid's former agent, Jeff Jackson, former assistant GM in the NHL, as the CEO of hockey operations with the club. Okay? So Connor now needs to get a new agent. So there's that. But you bring on his agent to be your CEO of hockey operations. Couple things right off the top. The current Edmonton Oilers GM has 1 year left on his contract, and he's stated that he doesn't know if he wants to work anymore past this year. Meaning the Edmonton Oilers are likely going to be in the business of hiring a new general manager. Ken Holland is respected, great tenure in Detroit. He's built a competitive team in Edmonton. They have not gotten over the top yet, but they've been to a conference final. They went to a second round last year. They've been a competitive team. And he's going to be in the Hockey Hall of Fame one day. But if he leaves the game after many years and great work and working for Detroit for over 20 years and then coming over to Edmonton and maybe they win a Stanley Cup this year, maybe they don't. Where does Jeff Jackson fit in the mix on who is the next GM? Does he get a say? Is he the next GM? This might sound like fan fiction. This might sound like crazy talk, but to me, it is not. I worry that the Edmonton Oilers are going to go back into their old ways of doing things and hiring people that aren't qualified to do a job. Hiring Jeff Jackson to be the GM of their team. Just because he's McDavid's former agent, you're worried about Connor McDavid leaving your franchise when this contract's up. You're worried about him being the anti-Sidney Crosby and saying, I don't want to spend my whole career with one organization. The gall. I could be wrong with this opinion, but it just reeks of desperation. McDavid's going to stay because he's going to negotiate his next contract with Jeff Jackson because he was his former agent and they have rapport. In my experience, if people want to leave somewhere, they normally do it for a variety of reasons. Now, there are people that just like to stay in their situation. You're born somewhere, you want to live in that city, or you move to a new city and you really like it and you don't want to try anything else. Well, Connor McDavid lives in Edmonton. I've been to Edmonton. That city's a shithole. I never go there. I hate it. But you might just like the team and you want to stay with the team, but you might think I'll have a better chance of winning somewhere else. In life, leaving somewhere is not a bad thing. And I think the Edmonton Oilers are using the thought process of, we got to put somebody here that's going to talk to Connor, knows him very well, and if he wants to leave this team, he convinces him otherwise through tactics such as your legacy will be looked down upon because you left this team. People won't look at you as favorably because you left. You didn't stay with one team your entire career like Sid, like Ovi. My God. That's an argument, though, that people make. It's stupid. In sports, player movement is hindered because of the thought of, well, I can't leave the team I was originally on because I chased rings. I can't leave the situation and for a better situation because I worry about what people are going to think. And you think I'm crazy? Just think about your life and think about decisions that you didn't make because you were worried about what other people were thinking. I will never have that issue because I don't give a fuck what people think. For instance, I'm from New Brunswick. I love it, New Brunswick, but if I had a chance to live in Miami tomorrow, I'd be there. DeSantis and all, bring me in. Nevada. Warm weather trumps where I'm from. All the people I know in the world that I love live in New Brunswick currently. But there's this thing as phone, there's FaceTime, streams. You can catch them on the phone. They can come visit, hop on a bird. And I don't worry about what people, oh, he left his family. He's such a piece of shit. People think you're a piece of shit if you stay where you are. Who cares? To me, this is so weak. This is so stupid. This whole Edmonton Oilers situation. Maybe I'm making a mountain out of a molehill here. But why are you hiring his agent to work for your team? So then if he leaves the team, do you fire him? Is he gone when... This was like the Broncos hiring Nathaniel Hackett to be head coach. This was before, remember last season? Before Russell Wilson was traded there, Nathaniel Hackett was hired as the head coach. And all the thought was, he can recruit Aaron Rodgers. He can pull off the trade. Aaron Rodgers will accept a trade to Denver because he loves old Natty Hackett. Didn't work out. Russell Wilson goes there. He turns out to be one of the worst head coaches in NFL history. Just asked Sean Payton. And he's gone after 13 games of coaching. Didn't really work out. Jeff Jackson might be brilliant. I don't know. But do I think he's qualified for this position? I do not. Montreal did this. Their GM is a former agent, but he really has no power because their president of hockey ops, Jeff Gorton, does everything. Their GM is just a mouthpiece because he speaks French and Jeff doesn't. And in Montreal, you need to have somebody that can speak French in a position, which don't even get me started on that today. God forbid you have somebody, I don't give a fuck what anybody's doing. You speak Hispanic and you're my GM. If you're good at the job, I don't care. Athletes don't speak the language, yet you love them because guess what? They go on the ice and they dominate. I don't remember two things Pavel Datsyuk said his entire career, but I saw him on the ice. He was a goddamn magician. Okay, go home, drink some Russian vodka, come back the next day, repeat. Great. Let's move on. But this Edmonton, it's just weird. Weird, strange, stupid, misread, desperate, stupid. Did I already say stupid a couple times? Yeah. I don't like it. Maybe I'm too aggressive on this. And I love Connor McDavid. He's the best player in the world. And he's still seeking greatness by winning that Stanley Cup. But he's not going to stay in Edmonton because his former agent is negotiating the deal with him. He will stay in Edmonton because he thinks it's viable to win. He's not staying in Edmonton because of the nice downtown area, I'll tell you that. Or he's not staying in Edmonton because of the traffic. Or he's not staying in Edmonton because the rink's really nice. That's the only thing nice I can say about it. That's all it's got, Edmonton. No offense, Edmonton, Alberta. But you live there, you know what I'm talking about. You know. Also, Matt Dumba signed a 1-year, $4 million contract with Arizona Coyotes. Good for him for finding a deal. Took him a while. Decent salary for a guy. He gets to go to Arizona. He'll play a lot. So if he has a good season, maybe he can throw that into a multi-year contract next summer. But I don't think he had a big market for himself. He has to accept with Arizona a losing team. Matt Dumba, he has some flaws. He has some chinks in his armor for sure. The way defensively, just overall, the way he plays defense is not optimal. He was on Minnesota for a long time. He can put up points. He's got a big shot. He's not afraid to mix it up physically. He'll never be afraid on the ice. But he's got some issues when it comes to just playing defense. So that's why his market wasn't all that big. Klingberg got a deal early because he accepted that deal with Toronto 1 year. Maybe Dumba was a little more stubborn, wanted a multi-year deal, felt he was worth it, and could only get 1 year from Arizona, and eventually he accepts it. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. Wish him the best this year in the desert. Did you miss the brawl this weekend in baseball? I love this. Saturday night, I'm just hanging out watching UFC Nashville while also keeping an eye on the Jake Paul, Nate Diaz fight, if you can call it that. And it pops up my phone, fight in Chi-Town. And the Chicago White Sox haven't been interesting. They haven't been relevant all year. But I see Guardians, White Sox, Jose Ramirez, double, slide into second. Tim Anderson is completely crowding the plate. Right in his face, he starts beaking at him, and he throws down his glove and he puts up his arms looking like Nate Diaz, sparring, got their arms up. And Jose Ramirez gives him the old crack right underneath the chin. He drops like a sack of potatoes. Awesome moment. Bench is clear. You'd never see it anymore. This was, I think, the first fight since the whole Rougned Odor, Jose Bautista incident way back when. And Jose can throw a punch. I'm going to tell you that. Tim Anderson acted tough after, trying to seem like he was fine. He looked a little shaken to me. And then we hear today. I love this for Major League Baseball. So, Chicago's shortstop, Tim Anderson, was suspended 6 games by Major League Baseball for picking a fight with Jose Ramirez. He picked the fight, he gets in more trouble. And Jose Ramirez was only suspended 3 games for actually landing the punch and knocking him on his ass. Anderson did initiate. He started the BS. He did this multiple times in the series. And Jose was fed up about it. And he actually initiated the war, and Jose just landed the better punch. You always love a good scrap. It's not going to mean anything. The Guardians and the White Sox are both going to miss the playoffs. But it was fun. Jose Ramirez appealed the suspension. He played yesterday against the White Sox. Tim Anderson didn't because I think he's got a sore jaw and maybe the old concussions symptoms. But it was fun Saturday night. It was more entertaining than the Jake Paul fight, I'll tell you that. So I like that. The Blue Jays are back on top. They swept the Red Sox this weekend. A good bounce back for the team after that disaster, embarrassing performance against the Baltimore Orioles. You got to see sustained. That's my thing with that team. I like their approach. They look reinvigorated. The call up, Davis Schneider, I mean, incredible. 2 homers, batting over 400 for the series. It just gave them life. Springer found his step again. So it was a great. They pushed the Red Sox out of it, and they sent a message. So that's a huge for them just to have some success and have some success against a divisional opponent because they hadn't beaten the Red Sox all year and they stunk up. They were 8-24 in the American League East prior to the series. So you have to respect that. Elsewhere in baseball, the Angels have to be just beside themselves right now. They get Lucas Giolito, they get Randall Grichuk, they trade for CJ Cron. And since the All-Star break, just prior to the All-Star break, they've lost 8 of their last 10, and they are now 7 games out of the final wildcard spot. Shohei Ohtani is the only player worth a fuck, per usual. And he's had some problems pitching with some blisters and some other issues. And they're a game under 500. So you make all these moves, and now you're up shit creek. 7 games back at the Toronto Blue Jays, and newsflash, they're not catching. The Angels are not going to be a playoff team again. And you make these moves to be competitive, and Shohei Ohtani is going to enter the offseason as a free agent. He'll be free to sign with any team that he chooses, and the Angels can do nothing about it because they chose to keep him. They might get hot. I don't think they're going to, but they might. But they're not making the post. They're 7 out. They're not making the postseason. They should have traded Shohei Ohtani, like I said, and tried to bring him back. But they make these little minor moves. You take on Randall Grichuk and CJ, okay, whatever. Giolito's been a disaster since being acquired. The Angels are done. You get swept at home by the Seattle Mariners, who sold, but yet are still competitive. They're 2.5 games back of the Blue Jays, and they're the closest team in the wild card race. They're getting clutch hitting. Their pitching starting to come together. I thought they were a playoff team from the beginning of the year, but I think they're going to be a tough out the rest of the year. They're 8 games above 500 now. Julio Rodriguez is starting to find himself at the plate. This team has life. Other stuff. Baltimore swept the Mets. Baltimore now has 70 wins. Atlanta and Baltimore are the first 2 teams to get to 70 wins. Baltimore's incredible what they're doing right now. It's something else. They win every game. Gunnar Henderson is emerging as a superstar. Their pitching, you still look at it and you go, is it good enough? I don't think Baltimore will represent the American League in the World Series. But their turnaround year to year is quite impeccable. The Rays have won 7 of their last 9, so they found their game a little bit. The Cubs are in a wild card spot. Their heater is not. They took 2 or 3 from the Bravos over the weekend. They're tied with Cincinnati for the final wild card spot, and they're also fighting. They're only a game back of Milwaukee for the divisional lead. So there's a race. You have the Marlins, who have been struggling. They've been the worst team post All-Star break other than the Oakland Athletics. So Interesting stuff in baseball. Still a lot of things to happen. Still a lot of games to be played. One game this afternoon, Dodgers currently lead the Padres 13-6. Yikes. Dodgers look to take 3 of 4 from the Padres. Scott Barlow, relief appearance, acquired at the trade deadline. 4 hits, 5 earned. But yeah, the Dodgers are starting to play better baseball. Their pitching has settled down a little bit. I still don't love their pitching staff. Tonight, you got the Blue Jays against the Guardians. Jose Ramirez will be playing because he's appealing the suspension. Marlins in Cincinnati. Huge series there. Cubs and Mets is important for one side of that. The Mets are trying to lose as many games as possible. Giants, Angels. So that's coming up tonight. In the fight game, if you didn't watch Nate Paul, oh yeah, you can say Nate Paul. Nate Diaz, Jake Paul, you didn't miss much. You got to see Amanda Serrano do her thing. She's the best female boxer in the world, in my opinion. But it was a lackluster affair. Jake Paul won the fight. Like everybody, he was a huge betting favorite going into it. Like he should be, because he was, Jake Paul is not everybody's favorite. He says some stuff that's really stupid. He talked about fighting Canelo Alvarez. That's a death wish. That wouldn't be a fight. That wouldn't be competitive. It'll never happen. He talks about being a world champion. That'll never happen either. But he knows what he's doing. He's a smart businessman. He gets into the ring with people that he knows that he can compete with. Tommy Fury was the toughest opponent that he's ever had, and he lost because Tommy Fury is a legit boxer. I think Tommy Fury, if he wasn't so interested in making these misfit boxing events with KSI and Jake Paul, he could actually get better, hone his skills, and fight against relevant guys. But the Fury family is more interested in fighting opponents that aren't actually boxers proper than they are in fighting actual competition with Tommy's brother, Tyson, fighting Francis Ngannou in October. That's a whole other discussion. But good for Jake. He won. He knocked down Nate. Nate did better than I thought he would do, actually. But Jake clearly won the fight. I didn't spend money on it. Found a stream, so I'm glad I didn't pay for it, I'll tell you that. But again, they continue to put on big events. People are interested in it. I know if KSI and Jake Paul ever fought, that would do crazy numbers, and it wouldn't even be a great fight, but it would do crazy numbers. And I think KSI wants it more than Jake, because I think Jake sees bigger and better things for himself. I really don't know who he fights next. I think if Jake Paul and Conor McGregor could somehow come together and fight, I think it would break pay-per-view records. I think it would sell more pay-per-views than Mayweather and McGregor. I think it would do better than that if they boxed, if they were in a cage. I don't care what it would be. Throw them in there with a couple live sharks. It'll break records. I don't think it's ever going to happen because McGregor's affiliated with the UFC. You have Jake Paul, who's affiliated with the PFL. He says he's fighting MMA in 2024. Good luck with that. I don't know who he's going to fight. It's not going to go well. Unless it's Dylan Dennis, maybe. But Jake Paul wins another fight, and we'll see where he goes from here with his next venture. UFC had a card this weekend in Nashville. First time in Nashville in 4 years for the UFC. And a really fun card. A fun card, a lot of fun fights, and some interesting finishes. We'll start with the headliner. It was Cory Sandhagens against Rob Font. And it was Cory Sandhagen winning grappling exchanges over Rob Font, who is a striker by nature. and had accepted this fight on short notice, and clearly had to cut more weight. And Sandhagen was more fresh and just controlled the grappling exchanges. Every round he got him to the ground and he controlled him. He landed some good shots on the ground. And Sandhagen does what he does. He went into his last two fights. He fought Rob Font and he fought Marlon Chito Vera. And he knew very well going into those fights that he had a way to beat those guys because their takedown defense is not very good. And their wrestling is the biggest weakness in their game. The one thing I can say about Sandhagen is fighting Font and fighting Chito is he didn't submit either of them. He didn't get a finish, and that's my one complaint. I think both those guys, if you are a high-level wrestler, if you're a high-level grappler, you should be able to finish them because it's not a strength. Credit to those two guys for at least having the defense on the ground to not get finished. But there was boos. Sandhagen was being booed during the fight. Dana White walked out in the fourth round. He could have went to the bathroom. I think that's being way overblown. I don't think he walked out because he was so bored by the fight. Was it the most interesting? Was it the most thrilling fight of the night? Certainly not. Honestly, two fights on the prelims were better than any fights in the main card with Billy Q and with Cody Durden and Jake Hadley. But Cory Sandhagen revealed an injury after the fight that's going to require him to miss 6 months. He's having surgery on Thursday. And he went in and didn't pull out of a fight that needed a main event, and he won it. He won the fight. He was supposed to fight Umar Nurmagomedov. He gets in there with Rob Font, a different opponent, and he gets a victory. And he's just continuing to pile up victories. And I look at it this way. If Aljo beats Sugar Sean O'Malley in 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks now, in 10 days in Boston, I think Aljo, this is his last fight at bantamweight, and he's going to move up to featherweight, potentially to contend for a title, to be in a position to contend for a title soon. But I think that's the decision he's going to make if he beats Sugar. If he leaves, the title is vacant, and Sandhagen and Merab should fight for the title. I know they'll want to do Cejudo and Merab because they have some history now and they have some animosity. And they were supposed to fight in Boston, but both men are injured. But Cory is more deserving than Cejudo. Cejudo's fought once. He lost in a title fight in his return. Sandhagen's beaten a lot of guys in the bantamweight division. Okay, he doesn't have the most interesting style, but he wins fights. That's the name of the game. Can you get wins? Can you continue to pile your way up? He's doing that. He was going to fight Umar. Umar pulled out. He has no business fighting Umar, who's ranked number 11th. But he did it because he's not afraid of competition. So I think if Aljo wins, that's the fight. If Sugar wins, then you go Sugar and Merab, and Cory does not get a title opportunity. Because Merab and Merab will want to win for his friend against Sugar. Merab has been in line to get a title opportunity for a long time now, but he won't fight his teammate in Aljamain Sterling. So that fight sells itself. Cory will have to wait. Maybe him and Cejudo could fight, and there's that option. But looking at this event, I think if Aljo wins, I think he's leaving the division. I don't have any clarity. He's talked about it before. He thinks this is his last fight at bantamweight. And I think if he wins, he vacates the title soon after, and it opens up the possibility for Cory Sandhagen to get a title opportunity against Merab Dvalishvili. Because to me, he would have deserved the opportunity more than Cejudo. Cejudo needs to win another fight before getting a title opportunity. He likely won't. I could see them to me, the UFC might book Cejudo and Merab for the title, but Sandhagen would be more deserving. You look his career lately, he's beaten Rob Font, he beat Chito Vera, he beat Song Yadong. His last loss was against Petr Yan in October of 2021. So he hasn't lost in 2 years. He continues to get better. Was it thrilling? No. But he gets the win regardless. And the booing, from the fans, it is what it is. People don't like fights on the ground. People don't like grappling exchanges. They like crazy, brawls and things of that nature. So that's going to happen. But good chess match and good win by Cory Sandhagen, if you ask me. Co-main event, you had Tatiana Suarez and Jessica Andrade. And Tatiana Suarez, she's fully back. That's for sure. This is her second fight back on her comeback. She's fighting Jessica Andrade, a former champion, and she wins via submission in the second round. Dominated the affair, looked great in there, comfortable. And now that'll likely vault her to 5th in the rankings. She's never lost a pro MMA fight. You have Zhang Weili fighting Amanda Lemos, who's number 4 in the rankings in 2 weeks in Boston. You have Carla Esparza, who is out right now because she's having a baby. Rose Namajunas has jumped up. So there's 2 names. You have Yan Xiaonan and Tatiana Suarez as potential opponents for either Zhang Weili or Amanda Lemos, depending on the result in a couple weeks. I would love to see the 2 fight because they have vastly different styles and they go about winning their fights incredibly different. So that would be a great fight. Zhang Weili should have been fighting Yang Xiaonan, if you ask me, in Boston, but I think they wanted to throw a title fight on the card to spruce it up a little bit. And they gave Lamos the shot. Could Yang Xiaonan and Tatiana fight before the end of the year? Certainly, because neither of them took much damage in their last affair, and both women's last wins were against Jessica Andrade, the same opponent. Now, the thing is, if they fight, how long does Zhang Weili have to wait? Things of that nature. Does it get pushed back deeper into the next year? But those 2 women are next. One of those 2 will get the next title opportunity. Both are deserving, but the UFC has to decide what they want to do with the respective women. Also, Diego Lopez, this kid's awesome. Lost his MMA debut, short notice fight, to Movsar Evloev. But in that fight, Evloev's never lost. He had him in submission attempts, nearly won the fight, battled his way through it, and he really impressed Dana White. So Dana White gave him a contract. He gives him a second fight against returning Canadian Gavin Tucker, who is a tricky opponent in his own right. 12 seconds into the fight, Lopez takes a kick right to the groin, inadvertently, but doesn't matter. It was a hard kick, and he dropped. But he gets up, allows Tucker to take him down because he's so dangerous on his back, and he gets a choke. He gets a choke in, and before you know it, the fight's over. Gavin Tucker, almost 2.5-year layoff, not a great return. Lopez, huge win, gets a huge pop from the crowd. He's a rising star in the UFC, and he wants to fight in Brazil in November. Love the guy. He's awesome. Tanner Boser, another Canadian on the card, last fight of his UFC contract, needs a win, and he looked great against Alexa Kimura. He was in the best shape of his career, fantastic striking, winning the clinch wars, landing body shots, being in good situations. And I it was one of the best fights he's ever had in the UFC. I thought he looked fantastic. Hopefully this means he can get an extension, because you win like that in a big event, in a big spot, it makes people look at you. In the light heavyweight division, it doesn't hurt him that he's in that division that's kind of up in the air right now. But good moment for him. Also in the light heavyweight division, Dustin Jacoby knocked out Kennedy Njoku. Lightning fast punches from him. After a 3-fight losing skid, he gets back in the win column. So big win for Dustin Jacoby. And to me, the two best fights of the card on the prelims, this fight being on the prelims made no sense. Billy Quarantino against Damon Jackson. This was awesome. First round, Damon Jackson dominates. I thought he was going to win the fight with a submission. Billy Q fights out of it. Second round, Billy starts to find his range, landing body shot, hammering Damon Jackson's ribs, and just body shot, uppercut, and he's starting to wear him down. And Damon Jackson, you could see he's running out of gas in that second round. Billy gets better as the fight goes on. Third round, it's close because Damon fought back. He landed a takedown. He was in good positions. But to me, what won the fight was Billy landing more damage, getting more shots. Yes, Damon had him on the ground, but he didn't really land anything when he was there. And Billy Q gets away after getting brutally knocked out by Enson Barbosa. He gets back in the win column, and he is one of the funnest fighters to watch in the entire UFC. He should be in front of a crowd every fight because you're going to get a banger. And you also had Cody Durden, Jake Hadley, flyweights. Jake Hadley suffers his first career loss in the UFC. This fight had everything. Crazy submissions where it looked like Hadley was going to win he had him in an arm bar. He was just pulling that arm for over a minute. And Durden somehow just gritted his way, pulling on the arm, pulling on his hands a little bit to relieve the pressure, but he fights out of it. Durden then almost submitted Hadley, having him in a rear naked choke, having it under his chin, but Hadley fighting out of it. Good punching. Hadley remitted after. He had a tough weight cut, had to really fight through it. But this was the fight of the night, in my opinion. Durden said on Twitter, I didn't get the performance bonus. Should have, if you ask me. But this was phenomenal theater. Durden has won 4 fights in a row in the flyweight division. But Jake Hadley is still a promising prospect. He still has heat with a lot of guys, so that doesn't hurt either with guys like Muhammad Mahayev. But you look at that, at the bottom of the flyweights, Durden, you have David Dvorak, Muhammad Mahayev. I think he should get a top 15 fight in his next fight, if you ask me, because he's earned it. A lot of guys are booked, but even Steve Erceg, who made his UFC debut, him against Cody Durden would be fun because he's got a fun style. So UFC Nashville, to me, it was a very solid card, a lot of fun. And now we got a card at the Apex this coming weekend. Vicente Luque against Rafael Dos Anjos, the veteran former lightweight champion. He's moving up to welterweight at 170. But for the Apex, it's pretty good. Cub Swanson is back. He's fighting Hakeem Dawodu, Canadian in the co-main. You have Khalil Roundtree against Chris Daukaus at light heavyweight. Jamie Pickett is on the card. You have Josh Friesen, Martin Boudet, a fun heavyweights. Juliana Miller, Marcus McGahee, who has made his first UFC fight, won in the second round via submission. So for an Apex card a week before a pay-per-view, not too bad. So that's coming up this weekend. We'll talk about NCAA football later in the week because there's a lot to chew on there, and I have a lot of thoughts on it. As I said off the top, Alvin Kamara suspended 3 games by the NFL for getting into a fight at the 2022 Pro Bowl. So he is gone. They also had Enjo Benjamin, they're a depth running back for the Saints. He tore his ACL, so he's done for the year. They have Kareem Hunt in on a visit, so he may be the next member of the New Orleans Saints. They also have Jamal Williams on the roster. You also have Ezekiel Elliott is on a visit with the Patriots. Dalvin Cook remains unsigned, so there's a lot of running backs who have experience that are available if teams and the player decide to come to an agreement. Cam Jordan, the great pass rusher for the New Orleans Saints, agreed to a 2-year, $32.5 million deal. Signing him, that would make 15 years with one team with only New Orleans for Cameron Jordan. Perennial Pro Bowler, been one of the best at his position for a long time, and he re-ups in the Bayou. So congrats for Cam Jordan and the team. We'll talk about the Saints tomorrow on my NFC South preview podcast. That's coming tomorrow morning in a replacement of just regular content and news of the day. That's coming tomorrow, so gear up for that. Chicago Bears made some signings. They signed Yannick Ngakoue, 1 year, $10.5 million. He had 10 sacks last year, had a really good year with the Colts. And they also signed Mercedes Lewis, who had been playing with Green Bay for a long time with Aaron Rodgers. He comes back. This makes, I think it's his 17th year in the NFL, which now makes him the longest tenured tight end in NFL history. So a special moment for Mercedes Lewis. He'll be there with Jimmy Graham and with Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet, and they have another veteran tight end there. But good landing spot for him. Justin Fields will have some help blocking with that offensive line with Mercedes Lewis. Finally, Anthony Davis signed a 3-year, $186 million extension with the Lakers last Thursday. That means he's going to be making $62 million per season, which surpasses Jaylen Brown's $60 million per year base salary, making Anthony Davis the highest paid player per year in NBA history. When healthy and when motivated, Anthony Davis is one of the best bigs, because he doesn't like to refer to himself as a center because he doesn't like to play center, in the NBA. No doubt about it. He's got skills. He's impossible to guard. He can knock down threes. He has everything you'd want, certainly. But there's always something with Anthony Davis. This is a risk because who knows how long LeBron's going to play, how long he's going to remain a Laker. This has nothing to do with this year, because I think the Lakers have the best team in the Western Conference. I think nobody can match them when it comes to skill, when it comes to depth that they can throw in an opposing team, and that includes the Denver Nuggets, even though the Denver Nuggets have a better player in Nikola Jokic. But do I love this deal for the Lakers? No. You have to keep the players. You have to give it to them. That's NBA contracts. It's not a negotiation. It's only 3 years, I suppose, but do I want to give a player that I don't entirely trust to be motivated or deliver for me that kind of money? I don't. But that's just me. Maybe I'm wrong. That an hour and a half flew by. That was fun. Hope you guys enjoyed that. That was lots happening in sports. It's August, but it doesn't feel like August, I'll tell you that. As I mentioned, tomorrow, be doing an NFC South preview pod for the NFL, just like I did the AFC South last week. I really enjoyed doing it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Check that out on your podcast feeds. That'll be coming to you tomorrow. NFC South, talking about all that's changed down there and what to expect this upcoming season. We'll also be doing another one later in the week. AFC North, I have that one done, so that's coming this week as well. Might be a couple more this week of these preview podcasts. We'll also be talking this week about some tennis. National Bank Open in Montreal, in Toronto, with the men and the women. It's been a tough day for weather for both sides. You had a rain delay for the women this morning, but they're back on court now. Victoria Azarenka is through. You're supposed to see Rebecca Marino tonight against Katie Boulter, who's from Great Britain. Venus Williams, Madison Keys. On the men's draw, you have two. You got a Milos Raonic playing at this event for the first time since 2019 against Francis Tiafoe. You could argue the best American tennis player in the world right now. And you also have Vasek Pospisil against qualifier Matteo Arnaldi. You have Berrettini through Hubert Hurkacz, Thansi Kokanis. You have Gael Monfils currently on court against Christopher Eubanks, who made that great run at Wimbledon. So you got some fun names at this event. Be bigger matches as the event goes on. Carlos Alcaraz is playing. 9 of the top 10 men's seeds are here. The women, all the big names. You have Rybakina, you have Sabalenka, Iga Swiatek is playing. So again, I think the women's tennis game's been better than the men in 2023. And I think that this can be said for this draw when it comes to this tournament. But you got night matches with tennis tonight coming up. Love it. Get you primed, get you excited for the US Open in a couple weeks. So thank you for tuning in tonight. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for the overall support as always. Have a great rest of your evening. This to the point.